Hey, Richard. Well, now that Richard's here, we can start. Actually, I'll say we'll give it a couple more minutes. I know traffic's really bad today. At least it was for me. All right. Did I?
Oh, I think we're getting ready to take off, according to FlightAware. Yep. It's going down the runway. 5 minutes ago, it's going down the runway.
It's pretty cool with the statuses you can see of the flights and such. Okay, I'll start at 6:35. And we're supposed to be more people here.
Departure time. $7:05.
Richard, how you doing today?
I'm good. How are you? Departure. 6:08. What did it say? Oh.
Yeah, there you did it.
What?
You knocked out my power.
Oh. Sorry.
Well, luckily it's one of those magnet ones, so.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. I'll try to do it again.
To be honest with you, I don't really need the power. I mean,
The moment you say that, though, is when your laptop will die in the middle of the presentation somehow.
it's either at 80% or 100%. Because this is, it's smart charges, so it might only be at 80%. It's an ARM processor, so that 80% will last quite a while. I'm not going to talk that long. I can tell you that much. So, all right, I'll go ahead and start. So, welcome everyone. Thanks for coming. I will preface this up front. Turns out I haven't given this presentation in 2 years. Haven't even looked at it in 2 years. So we'll see how well I remember it. I know all the concepts. It's just how well I remember my slides. I meant to bring my secondary monitor, and I forgot. So, there we go. All right. There we go. So, as always, want to thank our sponsors, Tech Systems for bringing food, Slingshot for a couple more months because they're moving, not because they don't like us anymore.
Who's moving?
Slingshot.
Oh, Slingshot moving?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, they're moving to New Loop. So, I'm not even sure why. From what I hear, they're never in their office anyway, so I don't know why they even have an office anymore. I bet you they're going to move to a smaller place. And New Loop makes sense for them. So, anyway, thanks for our sponsors. And then, the reminder afterwards, go to brick house. See, that's why I put it here, because otherwise I never remember the name of it. I don't know why. So, okay. Yeah, I think everyone knows who I am. All right. So we probably have all been guilty of this. I know I am. Right? You need history, right? You decide that, you're going to build your own history system for your data, right? So you can keep track of changes people made, right? And so you go through, you make this elaborate thing. It's probably got SQL triggers in there and doing all this fancy stuff. And your coworkers are like, oh my goodness, that thing's just a mess, right? I hate working on that thing. Your BA or your testers are like, I hate testing that thing because it's so buggy, right? Or it works, it doesn't work. I don't know what it's going to do, And of course, your project manager is like, I just want to get something deployed, right? And and I say we're all guilty of this because this is a common need, right? This is a common need where we need to know history of what happens to our data, right? It's the user made this change at this date, and knowing what the before and after states were. I mean, this is really normal, right? We get this request from users a lot, before temporal tables came into play, which I'll come to in a second. I literally have built this solutions for this probably 5 different times, right? And I think I've regretted it all 5 times, right? Because it was always had these weird issues. Plus, anytime you start building anything with SQL triggers, you're bound for fun, right? It's just, especially triggers that trigger off other triggers and all that good stuff. So there is the whole concept of system version temporal tables, right? And we normally just say temporal tables. This is not, I am talking about SQL Server in particular. And again, SQL Server, Azure SQL, it's all the same thing. I will most likely say SQL Server because even though I haven't actually dealt with it, well, that's not true. We have SQL Server. But I normally deal with the Azure side of things, but I still call it SQL Server. But temporal tables is not a SQL Server thing. It is a computer science term, right? And, so what are we talking about with these, right? This is the whole idea of tracking changes, knowing what changed in your data, knowing when it changed, and, what changed with it. The whole idea of it being system versioned is exactly what it sounds like. The system is handling this for you, right? So no longer do you have to write your own code to do this, right? And more importantly, it makes it immutable, right? Because now, the worst part about you write these things, and the business analysts tell you, okay, yeah, we need this, and no one should change this. Perfect. And then you get a requirement. Well, we need it. If this happens, we can change this data. I'm like, well, you said no one can change this, right? Or you get we need to, we need to just, can you go into the database and change that? We didn't mean to make that change. Right? And I'm like, well, that kind of defeats the whole purpose of having an audit system. With here, this is all built in. Now, there are still ways, because, there are legitimate reasons to do that. But, so it's all system version. There's a whole big deal of the rule of 2. This is where I wish I could see my notes. I'm going to look real quick because I'm trying to remember. I'm just going to do it this way. There's no animations in the slide deck anyways. So the rule of 2, right? So number 1, there's always 2 tables for every table, right? So you have your actual table, right? So your person table. And then you'll have like your person history table. And basically that person history is exactly that, right? It's keeping the history of that. It's actually those deltas that are happening. The other rule of 2 in here is you always have 2 period columns that are in SQL Server. They're datetime 2s. They have to be datetime 2s. And sure enough, in SQL Server, you shouldn't be using datetime anymore. Naming's hard. That's the reason why you have datetime 2. But they also didn't want to break everything. That's why there's the 2 of them. But and you have now the names of them could be whatever you want to call all right? But you have to have these two columns, and in the syntax, and we'll see the syntax here in a moment, you have to then specify, okay, this is the date that record became active, and this is the date that record became inactive. It's basically what those two dates are doing. And this is both in your main table and your history table. So in your main table, that date active is, okay, that's when this record, the most recent write to this record. Whereas and then the two value in SQL Server will be the end of time, or at least according to SQL Server. There we go. Sure enough, present company accepted. Recruiters are driving me crazy at the moment. We're doing interviews, so I'm getting the how did it go? You'll find out tomorrow. No, I'm joking. This is one of those guys. I like the guy, but he's pushy, right? And he's the account exec, right? So it's, and I'm saying, like, talk to my boss, the one who you need to be talking to. All right. Anyway, so in the active table or your primary table, it'll be set to 12/31/9999, which to SQL Server is the end of time. So, in 8,000 years, we're going to have to deal with the year 10,000 problem, because those will never end. And then in your history table, that end of the date, that is like, so it's literally showing you the period that record was active. And the final other big thing is, so availability. Actually, this has been available for quite some time now, right? I've been giving this presentation for a while. It originally came out in 2016, right? So it's been there. It's in every version of SQL Server, and to include the Azure SQL, right? And sure enough, if you weren't aware, most people aren't really, unless you're a DBA. There's almost no difference between features in SQL Server on-prem and Azure SQL, right? As a matter of fact, for like the last 10 years, everything is actually published to Azure SQL first, and then goes so it's actually ahead because they can publish it quicker. So that's just a synopsis of this. So, so why use this, right? I gave some example, some obvious, but let's talk about some scenarios here, right? Well, number one, this is like the one slide that does have animation, but so you want the immutable history, right? I talked about, we all see this, we'll make changes, or you accidentally did, because you missed something in your code, right? And the dates get changed. In here, those dates are immutable, right? And by default, you can't go and change it. You actually have to turn temporal tables off, make your change, turn it back on. So you can't even do it while temporal tables are turned on, right? So it's, they've really done that well. The next big thing is that, they've got built-in query support. So I can query, through just a normal SQL query, and I can say, hey, give me what the value of this record was on this date and time, right? Or I can even say, give me the values it was during these dates, right? So you can see, changes were during a period of dates and so forth. Those are, especially that give me the value as is date and time. Those are really important, right? Because think of you're running a store, and you're trying to do research on an order, and you can look up, okay, what were you selling this for at on this date, all right? The next two, basically because this is really because SQL Server is doing it instead of you, right? So one, the DML performance, right? So the whole data model language, right? Because you're not doing funky things, right? You are actually using built-in functionality into SQL Server, right? So it just works better that way. And the whole minimum maintenance cost, you're not writing it, right? So it's, you're just using features that are built in there. So, but some, the big use cases, number one is auditing, right? Tracking, auditing changes, doing data forensics. So like places I've used this in the past are things like, how do we know, health data? We've actually used this. What was this health value on this certain date? The example we're getting ready to use at Jasper is, what was, we need to know, as data is coming through, we need to know what, again, what was it on this particular date? What were we selling it? How did we sell that? Especially for warranty issues. Warranties are a big, big deal at Jasper, right? So we do a whole lot of stuff with that. The next one, let's see how many people squirm in this image. Reconstructing state. That whole idea that, you made a mistake. You through a script or the user made a mistake, right? And how we don't remember what the values were beforehand. Because that's never happened before, right? Happens all the time. Well, again, because I have history of this data, I can easily see what it was. And I can easily write queries to go and fix this. Or I can even do this in applications, right? I mean, so it's not like you have to do everything just, through a SQL window. Next one would be, calculating trends over time, right? Because again, I can now see that history, right? Because I actually have it. Slow changing dimensions, right? The whole idea of, how do we make a decision over data that changes slowly over time? Because that's actually a pretty hard thing to do. But, with this, it makes it a whole lot easier. And then finally, we talked about, reconstructing state, but just the accidental recovery. You accidentally deleted a whole bunch of records, right? So I probably have told most of you this story before, but, the whole reason why, if you ever see me write actual code in SQL, the very first thing I do is begin trans. And we all have a story why we do that. And my story is I pulled an all-nighter at the office. So I was probably on hour 27, 28, because it was already halfway through the day. And I got a request. And so sure enough, because again, one of these, we would never change data, but here, we're going to ask you to change this data, which was normal for them. And the system managed all the purchasing of IT for Army recruiting. And eventually Army sessions, right? It became a pretty powerful system. And there were expensive things in there. And one day they needed to change the price of UPS that they needed to buy. And these UPSs were like $1 million UPS. I mean, so, UPS is the size of a building, right? And they were buying like 3 of them or what have you. So, okay, update, blah, blah, blah. F5. Nowhere. And of course, I'm tired, so I didn't notice that it's taken a little while. Until I noticed it was taking a little while. And sure enough, I get a call. Hey, Chad, we're getting this really weird error. There was basically arithmetic errors because it was trying to multiply 1,000 times 1,000,000. And it was running out of space, right? That took a while. Luckily, we had good backups, and so we lost about 15 minutes worth of work, right? Thank goodness we had good backups. But if this was several years in the future, right, I would have had temporal tables, and hopefully I'd used them, and we would have not had those problems, right? It would have been a whole lot easier, and we wouldn't have lost any data. So those are basically use cases. So how do these work? I am going to go to, because the animations are actually kind of important here. So how do they work? So I talked about boy, that is horrible on this screen. I apologize.
I can read it.
Okay, from here it just looks horrible. So you got your. I know Miss Accessibility is in here, and she's every time
I'm not judging too hard because I'm also trying to think of it from the perspective of people that are watching it online. It's probably not quite.
Yeah, but it wasn't written for people online. But I will say this is an older presentation, so before I've learned how to write my presentations. But anyway, So I talked about your primary table, right? So we see this table. Doesn't matter what the name of the table is, right? So database table. You see, we got a normal table, a primary key, a name, and a foreign key, right? Pretty simple. So I mentioned the first rule of two, right? The value, these two other date time twos that are tracking the valid from and valid to. Again, the name can be whatever you want. That's a very common way how I name my stuff. But it seems like, ask me what system I'm working on, what I called it. It just, it doesn't really matter. Other than be consistent, name it the same way across your whole database, right? And with that being said, I'm talking to, C# developers, you're all using any framework. So it doesn't matter, you do it differently. And I will show that, I will get to that part. So you've got those two tables. And then I talked about the history table. And notice the history table has all the same columns. It has to have all the same columns. You will get SQL errors if you do not. All right, so it will not even let you turn on temporal tables without this. But it does not have the foreign keys in the primary key. So you notice here I had primary, I had a primary key, I had a foreign key, and the keys actually turned on. In my history table, I'm not allowed to. And you'll probably be like me, and I'm like, oh, I really want that foreign key, right? There's good reasons why it does not work, right? Because again, it's history, and you don't necessarily have the history on the other table. So the way how this works, so we're going to do an insert. So we'll paste some data in here, and then we're going to so that valid from will go in there, and like say the valid to, so it sets it to the date that I created this, or well, this is an insert, so I created the record, and like I say, the value from will be again the year 9999, right?
Do you send that data with your insert, or is it just default?
And not only is it default, you cannot set those values. So, because again, immutability, right? If I remember right, it doesn't air off if you send the values. It just ignores it. Or it might actually air off. I can't remember. So we've done that. And then what will happen is, behind the scenes, oh, that's right. Never mind. I forgot. So an insert, that's it. It's done. Nothing goes in the history table. Because the way how SQL Server is working in the background, when I do a query, it first looks at the primary table and then looks at if I'm doing a history type query. So at this point, there's nothing in there because there's no history. It's just the current record. So now if we do an update, so we'll send our data up there, and now what's going to happen before it even does anything, it's going to make a copy of the data, right? It's going to set that valid from to the date that it was, right? Because that was when that record, those values became active. And it's going to set the valid to whatever time I'm now, updating this record. And then it updates it. So it updated from tail end code to bricks with chat. All right. So that's and again, this all happens instantaneously. You don't actually see that delay. Now, if we do, I'm sorry, and then it sets your valid froms. Now, so what happens if we do a delete? All right. I don't know why I cleared out the history table, but it doesn't matter. So we do a delete. So what happens here? Well, so we send the delete command up, and again, it's going to copy all the data over. It's going to set that valid from, and then it's going to delete the record. So the record's still in your history table. So you haven't actually lost it. All right. So if I need to restore it, I can go back to it, or more importantly, I can still do those queries of what was, what were, my, with this foreign key of 456, what were my records as of, 2022-06, like 1815, right? What have you. All right. So a merge, basically works the same way. That's just what I'm trying to show here. Again, we'll send the data up. It'll do whatever it needs to do. Of course, a merge, the whole idea is you're either doing it, if it's not there, it does an insert. If it is there, it'll do an update. That's what a merge will do. Actually, there's a little bit more to what a merge will do. All right, so then a query. So what will happen here is, like I said, your regular query is just select star from temporal table, current or whatever. It's just going to query your current table, just like it would normally do. But now I have these special things, and we'll get more into those. But if I call one of these, so like if I say, and I have to add that for system time, but now I can say like, as of, right? And again, now I'll give my query for that. So that's when it will actually include, so it's actually doing a merge in this query. It's looking at the current table. It's looking at the history table based upon what your parameters of your query are. So what was I doing here? I think I'm doing exactly what I just explained. Yeah, so basically here so this is an example of what we see. Select star from demo table for system time. You have to do that, and then you see here I'm doing a between, right? And so I literally will get the values that happen in between those dates and times, right? And I can everything else in the query is just like you would normally do. You can see I can do an as of. So here we do have the one record because I'm asking for a specific date and time and to the second, right? And actually really to the millisecond. Actually, I think you can go to the tick if I remember right. But yeah, so you'll get the one record. All right, so a couple different types of query expressions. So one, and because I remember there's always get two of these confused. So first off, you got your as of a date time. That's the most obvious one. So give me what were the values of these records or this record as of this exact date and time. All right. So then you'll have, okay, I always forget the from and the between, what the difference is here. So the from is where basically ceased to be active after the end date time, and particular to the two. So basically, it's contained within, and then the between includes. I always get those mixed up. So your from date and time, date to time, will not include, the times you provide. The between does. I don't know why there's two different ones. I don't know. And then you have contained in. So, basically the difference here is that, this is looking for where it's exactly within the boundaries. So, and then you're all right, which it's at that point why you add in the extra clause for it, right? But oh no, I'm sorry, I forgot. All will actually give you all the history. So if I say select, select star from person, as of time all, I will get all the history for that record. Right. So that's where the benefit there is. I almost forgot that.
Chad,
Yes, ma'am.
like when it talks about like system time,
Mhm.
is that like where the time like for you on that's showing on your system, or is it like UTC?
Okay, so
Time for
the term system time is they're just talking about the time on the server. It's they're not really talking about any particular time, right? The times that are stored are the times on the server. So whatever time zone the server is set up to.
So that'd be like something that'd be good to know then, I guess, in that case. Like you'd want to know like what the time is on that server.
Yes. And that's why, and again, now this gets into more DBA topic, but I'm a big fan that your server should be UTC. All right.
Yeah, I know that's usually what I see. That's why I was a little unsure. I wasn't sure if like that was just like a default for like how SQL stored things, or if it went by.
SQL Server does store based upon the server time. Yeah. But I'm a big fan of I store all dates UTC, so I always know what they are. Even if I always know they're always going to be shown in one date time, because at some point that's not going to happen.
Or someone's gonna get in there and like mess with the time or something. I could see that happening.
So, times are fun. All right. All right. I'm not talking to you. Phone. So let's see what this looks like. Oh. And of course, the fun is this. I was explaining to a couple of folks. This is an ARM machine, and SQL Server does not run on ARM. You're supposed to be able to do it on a Docker container. I can't get that to work, and so I just do this in Azure SQL. So this is I just created this database, so there's nothing in here. It's a completely blank database. And it says the base. It literally is called basic. The SKU. So what we're going to do, and unfortunately, you're going to see me because I'm doing it through here, and I don't even have the SQL Server tools installed. I'm going to kind of going back and forth here. But so this first query, here we're just going to, let me actually switch this. That's different. That's not what I want. It's actually here that way. Maybe. Do it that way. There we go. Sure enough, this is the brand new Visual Studio 2026. I can actually now show it. I've actually been using it. It came out they're now going to call it Insider Preview, or no, Insider something. I forgot. They're getting away from the title Preview edition. But I've actually been using this for about a month. It's actually really nice. It's super fast. All right. So here we've got a query, and I will say all this is on my repo, so you can find this. And I purposely have a lot of comments in here so that the stuff is self-documenting. But here we can see we're going to create this table, and here we can start seeing that we've got our valid from, our valid to. Notice I've got this generated always as row start and as row end. Again, you just have to have it, right? It's required in the language. And in this column or this row right here is where I'm actually specifying what the valid to and valid from columns are. If you ask me, I wish I didn't have to do this. I wish it would just automatically, once I define that. But I didn't write this line, I didn't write it, and there's probably a valid reason for doing that. So, and then the other thing, and I hadn't talked about this yet, but this with system versioning on. So I can have these valid froms and valid tos. It means nothing other than the fact it is recording those values, but it's not until I actually turn system versioning on that I'm actually getting the system version. So in here, notice that I'm not saying anything about the history table. I literally just creating a table, right? Yes. Let me actually clean up. This is the first time I presented. I almost presented in this before I was supposed to. This is the first time I presented in this Visual Studio. So we're gonna copy this over here and go. And unfortunately, I can't make this one bigger. I can at least.
Control plus.
Sort of, but it doesn't do it very well. But at any rate, so we're just going to run this query. And so it's there. And so now, I have what you would normally think, right? Stars from, thank you for not working for me. Did I run this? Why is it still? All right, Azure, come on. Did it? Okay, hold on a second. Okay, it did create it. Run. There we go. I don't know why it took so long that first time. All right, so you see, and we've got exactly what you think of, the valid froms, the valid twos. I completely forgot I should have installed the SQL Server tools. One of the things I did want to show is that in SQL Server, when you look at it, it actually, the table actually has a little clock on it telling you that it's a system version table, which is nice. But also notice it's created another table, right? So it's created this MS SQL temporal history for 152580473. So because because like I said, there has to be that table, right? And that's, if we look, it's the exact same columns, right? So it's just automatically built it for me, and gave it a name. Now the name is actually predictable, right? So it's not like it's not random values actually. Everything up until the number is always at that value. The number is actually the object ID for the parent table. That's where that number comes through. So there is actually some validity to it, right? And so you actually can programmatically use that. But that's honestly not very good, right? I mean, it's at least I've now got history on my stuff. But here we look at this query. Notice here I say history table equals default history, or default department history, right? So basically, the only difference with this one, when I run this, is, it runs just as fast and everything else. But now we'll see in our table list, we've got our default department and our default department history. And again, I completely forgot to put SQL Server Management on my box. I really do like it because in SQL Server Management, you just see default department when you expand it, then you see the history table. I really like that cleans that up. Because obviously, if you put a whole lot of history tables, it puts a lot of cruft in there, right? So we've got like that. So that's one additional thing. If we look at the next one here, so in here, okay. So one of the things you might want to do is you might actually want to create your history table. I've actually have worked for companies where the rule was no automated tool writes anything, right? You write everything, right? So that's kind of what we're doing here. I will say for the longest time, this was the stance that I did with my temporal tables. We would always build the history table. I don't do it anymore because it's just a waste of effort. Because all I was doing was create my department table in this example, paste it into history, and then change the generated values and take out the these values here, right? I just spent more time, right? But it is possible. I didn't mean to copy the whole thing, just the actual SQL. Oh, come on. And like I say, there are actual use cases for it, but oh, that's fine. That won't really matter. It will matter if I use the right thing. Because it's already got past there. There, we'll run that. Okay. So, ignore the little error. I did create the basic version of SQL. You wouldn't normally actually do that. It's a pretty limited version of the database. But again, we see, I've created my department and I have my department history. There's nothing special. It's the exact same thing like we saw the other places. But you do have that ability. Honestly, usually when I see people still want to do this, it's because they're fully documenting their database. And so they want they want that part of it, to put the like if you're using a Redgate SQL doc, right, to document your tables and so forth, which is actually a really nice tool. I like that tool. I just don't document my history tables. All right, so this next one I want to show. So here's the other really cool thing I can do. The valid from, valid to. I don't necessarily want everyone who can query my table to see it. Because one, it doesn't necessarily mean anything to some people, right? So one of the nice things we can do is we have this hidden command, all right? And so, if let's copy this over here. Well, so like if we look, just do a query here. So select star from department, right? Just to show you when we do that. I'll select, helps when I put my command in the right place. Oh, come on. Now if I run it, we can see in here, we see that valid from and valid to. And again, nothing wrong with having it in there. But maybe we want something like this. We run this. And now, but now if I run this, we'll see those values are not there. But they are in the table, right? So, it's, this is company location. Oh, I got to refresh this. I don't normally do demos from this query box. So it is still there, right? So, because like I said, it has to be. It's required for this to work. Now, the interesting thing you could do in here is I can say valid from, valid to, and do my query. And I get those columns, right?
This excludes them from the star.
Yep.
Is that specifically for temporal tables, or that can be used with any column?
No, I wish. Yes, you have the same thought when I first saw hidden. Oh my goodness, this is awesome. No, not that awesome. I'll tell you, I'm about to show like because right now so far we've created all new tables. You can add this to existing tables, which I'm about to show. That's where the hidden really becomes a big advantage. The first time I used this, which was pretty much right after it came out, my data analyst, they knew enough to be dangerous.
Yeah.
Right. I didn't want them to know about these values, right? Because they were going to do stuff with it, right? And I didn't want them to do anything with it. I didn't want them to depend on it and so forth. So we hid everything because they were also bad about doing select star, right? And of course, you're not supposed to do select star. And then I remember, so here, like I said, what happens at, hey, Chad, can you not add this to an existing table? Yes. So here, in this example, I'll create that old department table. Notice I'm not doing history on here. And then I'm going to alter table. I'm going to add the from and to. I'm going to specify that system time. In this example, I'm creating the history, the history table. Remember, I don't have to actually do that, but I am doing it in this example. And then finally, I'm altering the table one more time, turning on system versioning. And so we'll run this. And I can't remember which tables I need for further demos. That's why I'm running all of them. So there you go. So now we have that. I should have ran it slower, but I now have this old department. And like I say, I should have ran it the first part, showed that it didn't have the history stuff. But I think you all believe me. So that's okay. I can always redo it, right? It's not a problem. There we go. Since Arissa wants to be the trouble child here. No. I don't want anyone to say, well, he he tried pulling something over us. No, I'll do the demo. So now this time I'll just do my old department 2, refresh this thing. We'll see old. Oh. Try it again. Refresh this thing. We'll see my old department 2. It does not have the history information in there. I alter this table. All right, now we'll refresh this. This is actually really annoying inside this tool. Oh, come on. Why isn't it there? Oh, no, it should still show. Oh, because there was an error. Oh. See, this is all Arissa's fault. And the fact that I named everything because I'm good at writing databases, except for when you asked me to do it off the top of my head. Now, if I look at it, because it worked, now we see it's got the valid from and to. And now if we create this one here, we got that, and then finally we can create that. Right, so same old thing. All right, so that's all about creating or updating tables. All right, and again, so far everything I've showed is in SQL Server. I will show this actually all works in Entity Framework also. But that's how we create everything. So how do we insert data? Well, again, like I said, inserts are, I don't know why that formatting's wrong, but inserts just like we always do, right? But a couple of things notice that I'm doing here. So this first one, I'm inserting the table. Notice I am not inserting anything into that valid from, valid to, right? Because like I said, you don't need to. It's done for you automatically. The second one, if you have a DBA who says thou must specify every column. I've had those DBAs before. You can, right? I can have I can call a default. I can also do this when I don't have column names, right? Where I'm just saying insert into. I do not like doing this kind of thing because I like to have a little more control. And I can also do it without any values, right? So that's what we're showing in here. Like I said, I'm going to run all this so that when I do the queries, they all run correctly. Because I think it all makes sense what I'm saying there. Arissa, shut up.
Oh, that was me saying that.
No, I didn't actually hear anyone say anything. I was being facetious. I knew someone was going to say something. All right, this next example here. So here, we're going to update the department, and we're going to set the manager to 10. So that's actually, I should have looked at my script before not the SQL script, but the actual demo script that I have written out. But if I do a search for department, right? So let's select star from department. Department. And if I run this, select from. It's always fun typing in front of people. We haven't inserted anything yet. I thought I did. I saw that table that said successful.
You didn't begin transaction stuff, did you?
No. Not unless it was in here. Not that one. Okay, now I'm really confused.
This is what you get for trying to pick on
Okay, that one definitely worked. At least it says it did. All right, I might end up getting extra data in here, which will muck my demo slightly. Oh, no, okay, we're getting.
Okay, save the date.
Well, not really.
So this is why I avoid live demos. I know that's easier for me to say than it is for stuff like this.
So this is why I don't do live demos too much anymore either. It would. I do actually have a written down script. I just didn't get a chance to look at it. Let's do. Let's just do this. Yeah, it's already got that in there. All right, I select star from department. All right, I don't know. It's now working. Okay, so we've got that, for heaven's sakes. So what I wanted to show, we also do select star from department history. Lovely. Like I say, this works a little bit better in the other one. So here, okay, it is showing that one. So in my history right now, I don't have anything because everything was just inserts. That's what I was trying to get to. But now if we were to add this update in here, and like I say, there's nothing special I have to do for an update. I'm just running an update. So again, we'll look and so manager, our department 10 now has manager 501. All right. So there we go. We see department 10 has manager 501. Right. Now, if we look at the history table in here, we now see that it was, manager, it was manager 101. And we see that it was valid from September 9th or September 18th, from 7:59, well, UTC, and 23:19. I can't read dates and times now. So it was basically valid for that very short period of time, right? So that's what I was trying to show. Notice what I want to show here. Here are we where I'm expecting to get error. Now watch it not error off. Yeah, good. So cannot update and always generated data. Again, they're immutable. They're purposely locked down, right? If for some reason you needed to, you turn off system versioning, make your changes, and turn it back on. The times that I've done that for valid reasons are when I'm trying to insert data that I know the history of it, right? That's, I have actually done that in the past. So that's updating. In here, we could see that we can update. So here we can start seeing we're doing queries. I'm not going to, because I hate trying to fix this up, but I'm just going to show the queries instead of running them right now. Because these date times get fun when they're so small period of times. I got to actually make sure I get it in the right period. But here, again, I can do updates based upon, because it's just a query, right? I'm just, as of this, date and time. I can, here we can see it deleting data. So, again, so if we look at this, so if we look at our company location, we can see that it's got, these 4 different locations. I don't know why, but apparently there's 2 locations this is not very good data. Apparently there's 4 headquarters for this place. Who knows? And again, if we look at the history, there's nothing in here, right? Because there's nothing in here because we just inserted data in there, right? But again, if I was to delete the record, Yeah, let's like change this a little bit here. That would work, but let's not get rid of everything. Let's say where city equals, wow, okay. Let's do where company location ID equals 1. So I'll delete this. Helps if I spell it right. And now if we were to look at this, oh, well, that was just delete. So now if I look at company location, we'll see that the 1 is gone, that first New York is gone. And if we look at the history table, it's now in there, right? So again, it's not actually gone, right? Now there are times you want to really get rid of it, and you can delete it from here, right? I mean, so that is possible. And then I'm not going to run this, but just the merge. All I'm really trying to show is the merge works just like normal, right? And if you've not seen a merge before, this is what a merge is doing. So the whole idea behind a merge is I can give it like a set of data. It could be like this. It could be a query from somewhere else. You can do a bunch of cool things with merge. And then you're literally saying, I match it based upon department ID between the target and the source. And I say if it matches, we update it. If it's not matched, we insert it. You can even have a delete if it doesn't match. So interesting thing you can do in there. But then finally, our last set of queries here, are just all about how we query it. So here, oh, that's right. I did write this so this works. So if we go in here, so what we're going to do, let me show it here first, is I'm going to create another table called inventory, right? So just like normal, we're going to insert in the inventory. We're going to insert these 5 records, all right? So far, nothing history related. We're going to actually have a 2-second delay, and then we're going to update the inventory. And so we're going to update the quantity and such, do another update, wait for 2 seconds, then we're going to delete, and then finally I'm going to check for values, right? So let me run all of this prior to this. And this takes some time because there's delays. Believe it or not, there is a way to delay a SQL query. I did not know that until I needed to figure out a way to do this in a demo. And that was before ChatGPT, so I couldn't use I had to find that out the hard way. So now, well, first, if we select the star from inventory, we can see just those 2 records because those are the 2 that are left, right? I can notice that I don't see the history, just like before. I can now see those history columns. And again, we can do queries against that, right? So just showing, we see all those records got populated during that time. So that's your general querying, right? But now to make the queries a little bit nicer, we can do point in time. And again, I'm not going to try to figure these times out here directly, but you can just see how it is. I literally give it, select these values. We can do interval queries. So, again, that, the border cases are, for the upper bound are different in here, or am I contained in? And then finally, this last example here. What happens when you start getting a whole lot of history here? That's one of the problems you'll have once you start doing template tables. If it's a very active table, your history table is going to get a whole lot of data in there, and you don't necessarily want history for all time, right? And it's kind of what we're seeing here, right? So in this example here, I'm trying to remember, in this example here, we are we're going to actually turn off system versioning. We're going to actually delete since a particular date and time, and then or before that time, and then we're going to turn system versioning off. So that's one way you could do this, right? So I can have a nightly script that deletes before a certain date or time, or just in general. That's great, but that's not really what you should be doing. You can do that. A better example, so I can actually, there's retention. This actually was not originally in temporal tables, but I now actually can have a history retention. And so I can actually say, like in this example, 30 days. And so it automatically will get rid of that data 30 days, right? More likely examples are 3 years, 5 years, whatever your requirements are, right? Note, it is a delete, right? So your backups will still have them for as long as you have your backups, but it is gone at that point, right? It's not like it's somewhere else, right? Because that is deleting your history. So you do have to be a little bit careful with that, because you might accidentally got something rid of that you didn't really mean to. All right. Let me just take a quick look to see, because I haven't looked at this at all. No comments. Okay. All right. So that's all in SQL Server. Of course, now everyone here is probably like, oh my, well, you probably actually like doing SQL Server. I forgot you're in the room. Most people that come to this meetup never want to see SQL Server, right? Never want to touch a SQL script. There's a reason why I go through all that, though, because I want you to understand the way how it actually works, right? With that being said, since 6, I think it was, I have it here on my slides. Template tables are now supported in any framework. You could always do it in any framework, but it was kludgy, right? I mean, you had to do a lot of things on your own to make it work. But now it's built in, right? So, whoops. And if anyone know why I have a unicorn, there is actually a valid reason why I have a unicorn. Any framework's project name is unicorn. So, but anyway, we now, yes, since EF Core 6, notice EF Core, not EF, right? And there is a difference. But since EF Core 6, we now have this built in here, right? This is actually, and sorry, the screen's just small. This is actually one of the oldest requests that were in there. The request was actually, so here's I love about this request. This request added to any framework was put in March 3, 2016. SQL Server 2016 was released June 1st, 2016. So even before it technically was out, people are already asking, when are we going to get this in the new framework, right? So sure enough, it is there now, right? So, within EF Core, I can create my tables, right? And it's got this simple syntax. I'm not having to do all that convoluted stuff you got to do in the SQL. I can transform existing tables. I can have my query and historical data. Okay, Microsoft list restoring data from some point. Okay, any framework doesn't build it in. You got to write the any framework code to do that. Let me rephrase. You have to write your C# code to do that. You're not actually mucking around with any framework. But so you can do all that stuff. So, and the great part is they literally added into the link extensions. So we have temporal all, temporal as of, temporal from to, temporal between, and temporal contained in. So all the things I can do in the SQL language, I can do in any framework, and they all work the exact same. There's nothing different I have to do, right? So it's really cool with that. All right, so and I'm not going to tempt fate. I'm not going to run this demo because I didn't run it before, and well, I can't run this demo. This demo, well, I could if I made some more changes. The demo was meant to be run locally, but I will show it. So if we go in here, because I just want to show how much easier this is, right? So if we look in here, if I look at my employee table, notice the employee table is just like you would normally see. There's nothing in here that talks anything about temporal history in here, right? Where that changes is in my context, right? So in here, notice is temporal, right? And by simply defining that, any framework, when it's when you whatchamacallit, scaffold your database, it will automatically add the valid from, the valid to. I forgot what it uses by default. You do have a way to actually specify that if you want, if you have a rule, what they're going to be called. It does have a set name. I just can't remember what it is off the top of my head. And it'll set the system, the system versioning on, right? So it does it all for you. It's really nice. And again, like I say, they built it so that you could actually specify those values. And just to give you an idea, where I literally have not looked at this in almost 2 years. So, oh, it's right here. I've just got to look at it. Okay. So if we look here, I've got a couple different methods in here. And like I say, this should work. It's just I have to set up the connection strings and all that good stuff. But so you can see in here, again, I'm just doing a regular save. I'm not doing anything different with this. It's just working like normal. In here, I'm doing delete just like normal. But here you can see I'm printing the employee history. So in here, you can see I'm actually pulling in, okay, it calls the period start and period end. That's what any framework calls those values. But the whole trick is in this, because I was printing the whole employee history, I do a temporal all, right? So again, it's just built into the link is basically what I'm trying to say. Here you could see we're doing it as of, right? I really don't like the fact that in the Microsoft documentation, they list the restore database as a feature. Like I say, it's not actually featured in any framework. You got to write the code, but the code's pretty simple, right? I mean, so in this example, I'm going to get all the history. I'm going to get my deleted. I'm going to get my deleted employee out of there, and then I'm going to basically insert it back. I am doing interpolated because I'm notice that we're setting the insert on and so forth, right? Because that's turned, a couple of things you have to do a little bit differently. But I mean, what we can say.
Question.
Mm-hmm.
Temporal, a table that has history, alter table, adding columns, deleting columns, and renaming columns.
You have to turn off temporal table first, make those changes. You have to make them on both sides because it won't do it for you automatically, and then turn it back on. It is a little bit of a pain. Again, any framework will do that for you. Although I say this, I'm not a fan of I mean, everyone here has heard me say this. I'm not a fan of code first, but it will. If you are using it, it will do that for you automatically. So it is nice about that. But the correct way to do it, in my mind, you have to turn it off, make your changes, and then turn it back on. And of course, the part you got to remember is turn it back on. Ask me how I know.
Is there a server level setting required for use of temporal tables, or is it just projected?
It is built in since 2016.
Nice. If I want to move the history somewhere else instead of just deleting it, is that an option?
Yes.
Like if I want to just put it in the long-term tape drive or something?
Yeah, because it's regular data, right? So, in that case, that would be very simple. I mean, that'd be very similar like what I do in Cosmos, right? So in Cosmos, it doesn't have temporal stuff, but it does have like TTLs. Yeah. And, one of the things we'll do is, Cosmos is quote unquote expensive. It's not actually. but I don't necessarily want to keep history data in there, right?
Right.
So a lot of times we'll say, okay, the TTL on this is 30 days, but actually in Cosmos we use a change feed to automatically then copy it over to like table store or blob storage, whatever. It's much cheaper, a little bit slower to query, right? So it'd be you would do a similar scenario, right? Like have a regular job, like an SSIS job that would run on a normal process. Obviously, if you're using Azure SQL, you don't have SSIS, but what you can do is automation accounts.
Okay. All right, cool. And then on the entity framework side, if I want the temporal properties valid for our period, start period, and could I add them to the model? Or is it something you have to grab separately?
On any framework?
Yeah.
Yes, you can create them yourself.
Okay.
You just don't have to.
You don't have to, okay.
And generally what I find is most places, when they start using this, they just let any framework do it. Because it's just less code they have to write.
Yeah.
But again, the reality of the world is, people have to deal with DBAs, and DBAs have rules, right? And so that they'll say, well, this must be named this way or what have you, right? Or you don't like the syntax, the names that it does it by default. So you can definitely do it.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yep. All right. I mean, that's like I say, this is one of these things. It's most people don't even realize it's there until you find it out, and then it's like, oh my goodness, that's amazing, right? Where was this all this time? So this is one of the talks I really like giving. Even like I said, I haven't given it in a couple of years. I am giving it. Well, I'm getting a 20-minute version of this in November, and again in June, or not June, not that far off, March. Yes, my speaking calendar does go out that far. So
Hardly falls only like a week away. Hardly falls only like a week away. Or less than a week till fall. August.
Oh.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was not grasping what you were saying.
All right.
But I got it at the end, yeah. So, okay. Oh my goodness, recruiter, stop. I mean, really, how many times is this guy going to text me? Yeah. So, I mean, that's all I've got. I mean, I'm assuming everyone's going over to. Well, you're more than welcome to join us at Brick House. Yeah.
Come in here.
I love.
I'm not getting your pretzel this time. I'm gonna get wings.
All right, so end the stream. Click that again. Come on. Oh.